Hi, I'm Mark, this is Mark's Tech Blogs on YouTube, and today I'm going to review this monitor from Philips, which might be the ultimate office monitor, whether you work from an actual office or from home. I'm not even going to try and say the model name of this monitor, but of course it is in the heading for this video. I do wish companies would stop coming up with monitor model names that are so complicated. Now at the start of this video I want to tell you guys that I have been sent this monitor in order to review, however I do have to send it back. It basically means I get to use a nice monitor for a couple of weeks, share my thoughts and then send it back to the company, but I have the chance to try out some new tech. There's been a few monitors like this which I've done in the past, and there's absolutely no conditions as to what I can and cannot say, so this is going to be an honest review. It's also going to be a long review, so I will put chapters below, and let's kick off and talk about price. So this monitor costs around £560 on Amazon, but if you dive into Amazon Warehouse you can find it for as low as £420. That's a pretty good saving if you're willing to take a chance on a smaller warranty. I'll put a link below where you can find it. So let's talk about design. So this monitor is a curved monitor, and that means it has a design where the edges of the screen reach in a little bit more towards you. This makes it much more comfortable to use for longer periods of time. This monitor's body is largely in black, apart from the included stand, which is silver. The bezels around most of the monitor are pretty slim, but then there's that larger bezel at the bottom as we see with most monitors. That stand that comes with it can also be angled and also moved up and down to get a comfortable position. On the top of the monitor you'll find a pop-up webcam. Then on the left hand side you'll find some USB-A and USB-C ports plus a headphone jack. This is an output or input jack. On the bottom right you've got all the usual buttons for settings and a power light. And then on the bottom left there's some lights including a busy light, a cool light and a mute light. Now Philips say you can set this busy light via a keyboard and you can also sync it up with Microsoft Teams. This isn't something I've tested as a Mac user who doesn't use Teams. In the middle of the bottom next to the Philips logo you also have a sensor. And Philips say this is a power sensor which you can hook up with Windows 11 to detect when you're not at your desk. That means it can switch your computer into low power and save energy. Again, as a Mac user this isn't something I've tested. Then on the back underneath you've got places for the power, you've got 2 HDMI ports, a display port, 3 USB-C ports, an RJ45 and 2 USB ports. There's even a pull-out earphone hook on the side. As an overall this monitor looks smart but isn't pushing anything when it comes to design. So let's move on and talk about the spec. Now monitors have absolutely tons of things when it comes to specifications, so I'm going to talk about the things that I think are important. If you've got a question about something I don't mention then pop it below and I'll try and answer it for you. So firstly this monitor is a 34-inch curved monitor with a 21:9 aspect ratio. It has a WLED backlight system and the display can support up to 16.7 million colours. And it does this with a contrast ratio of 4000:1. It has a brightness of up to 450 nits in standard dynamic range and 550 nits in high dynamic range. And then the ratios depend on how you're connecting a device to this monitor. That means if you plug it in via HDMI, you can get a display of up to 340 by 1440. And this is at a 100 Hz refresh rate. If you plug it in using Thunderbolt 4, then you get a 3340 by 1440 display with a 120 Hz refresh rate. I've been using both, so I've been connecting my work MacBook Pro via Thunderbolt 4 and my personal Mac Mini via HDMI. Both work well and look great, and you can't really tell the difference between those two refresh rates if I'm honest. One of the important things with a monitor is anti-glare. And I've got a window just to my left here and the monitor is in front of me. In using it I found that it doesn't matter what time of day it is, the monitor has no glare and it's comfortable to use. And then I've already talked about the ports when I was talking about the design, but let's go into some of those a little bit more in depth. So the audio jack on the side, as I said, is both a mic in and an audio out. It has an RJ45 LAN port as well. It also has a Thunderbolt 4 downstream port which supports data, video and can charge devices up to 15 watts. It has 2 HDMI ports and 1 display port for connecting different devices as well. And of course you can connect via Thunderbolt. There's also another USB-C port which supports up to 100 watts charging. In addition to that there is a third USB-C on the back as well. Those rear Thunderbolt ports also support daisy chaining displays which I haven't tested. And then on that side you've got that USB dock which is pretty handy. That has a USB-C port and 2 USB-As. And all of that means that this monitor has a huge amount of ports, not just for powering devices, but also for being able to keep things nice and tidy on your desk. And you basically get access to all of these when you connect it via Thunderbolt. In addition to that, you get access to that pop-up webcam at the top. And that built-in webcam is a 5 megapixel full HD camera. It also has sensors built in, which means if you're using something like Google Meetings, it crops you into the screen automatically using AI to detect where you are. Now Philips also say it works with Windows Hello facial recognition, which I haven't tested. That camera also has a built-in microphone, and the monitor also has built-in speakers. That camera at the top can also be tilted. Now in my opinion, that's all we need to talk about when it comes to the essential spec for this monitor, so let's talk about getting it set up and running. So in the box you get the monitor, you get the stand, you get a HDMI and USB-C cable, and a power cable. Now putting that stand together is nice and easy because the body just screws onto the bottom. You then clip the back of it onto the monitor. Now whilst I did that to check out what the setup was like, I've mostly been using it with a wall mount. And setting this up was easy to use as well because I've already got a wall mount on my wall because I use that with my other monitor, so I just used my existing spacers and screws to do that. And then once you've done that, this monitor is pretty much plug and play. So let's talk about using it, because that's what I've been doing for the last 2 weeks. And I've been using it every day for roughly 5 hours a day, depending on whether it's a weekend or a weekday, and whether I've been doing kind of hobbies or work. And so firstly, everything on this monitor is crisp and clear, and I've been using it via HDMI, but also via USB-C or Thunderbolt. I'd say there's a difference in the screen resolution you can see between the two, but not a difference in the refresh rate. But whether it's 100 or 120 Hz refresh rate, both keep everything super smooth. That screen is also super bright, and I've not noticed any glare on it at all. And actually this screen is really comfortable to use for long periods of time. It also gives you a huge amount of space to have multiple windows open at once. And one thing I always say with curved monitors, and I do actually use a curved monitor I personally own every day, is that they're much more comfortable to use for longer periods of time because it does bring those edges of the screen back to you. And it's always my preference to have a bigger monitor over two smaller monitors because you've got absolutely no join or anything, and they are just really nice to use. I do think, however, going back to my regular monitor from this is going to give me a bit of a shock because I won't have quite as much screen space to use. And the screen space on this monitor is crazy. You can easily have 2 full-size windows open, or maybe even 4 if you've got smaller ones. And this is great for multitasking or whatever it is you do. So it's great for editing videos, it's great for writing videos whilst looking at a spec, but it's also great for writing code whilst previewing what you're doing. And then the second thing we should talk about for using it is that webcam. And I've been using that webcam for all of my work meetings for the last couple of weeks as well, with absolutely no issues. The picture quality is good even when it's been a little bit darker, and I've also been coming across nice and clearly thanks to the built-in microphone. I also really like that you can angle it if you need to, and that you can just tuck it down. I do find that sometimes the AI kind of cropping is a little bit overreactive, and so if you do move, it can suddenly go in and out and crop you a bit more than it needs to. What I can't find on a Mac, or certainly on Google Meetings, is a way to turn that off. My main criticism with this whole system, however, is the built-in speakers, which in my opinion just aren't loud enough. I've had them at full volume on video calls and still struggle to hear. That might just be my hearing from years of playing drums. Jokes aside, I do think they should be louder. That's meant I've basically either used headphones or laptop speakers on the call. And having that little headphone hook on the side is pretty useful. And this leads really nicely to talk about the third thing I want to talk about, which is the accessories and the spare ports. And having that dock on the side is really useful because it means you're not having to reach under if you want to use a USB. It basically gives you easy access to USB ports if you want to charge your phone or something while you work. And even having little things like that headphone hook show that Philips have really thought about how this can be the ultimate office monitor. And then fourthly, we should talk about settings. And the settings menu, as with most Philips monitors, is pretty simple to use. There's 4 buttons and the little labels basically tell you what they do. And you can use those to adjust basically anything from audio volume to screen quality to brightness and kind of everything in between. Switching inputs using those controls is also pretty easy. So all in all, what's the verdict on this monitor from Philips? And really, whilst this monitor does offer a lot of features geared towards Windows users, it's still an absolutely fantastic monitor for Mac users. My main criticism of it, having used it for a week, is that it's not always very good at switching between devices. If you set a device you want to connect to manually, then that works really well. But when it comes to switching off one and turning on another, it takes a little while to actually pick up the change of device. And the reason I'm including this as a criticism is because I've noticed that it is much slower than other monitors I've used before. It's obviously not a big deal if you just use one device or if you're happy manually switching, but I always make honest reviews and it's worth mentioning that. All in all, however, this monitor has a beautiful display, is really comfortable to use, and is a really high build quality. And if you're looking for a quality curved monitor, then it is worth checking this one out. If you do want to check it out, I'll put a link below to it on Amazon, which will go to Amazon in whichever country you're in. That's an affiliate link, which means if you use that link and make a purchase, it will help this channel out at no cost to yourself. This isn't my full-time job and I don't get paid for these reviews, so if you use one of those links and make a purchase, I do genuinely appreciate it. If you've got any questions about this monitor, stick them below and I'll answer those for you. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like, subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you guys again soon.